You sit down to finally start. The deadline is real. The task isn't even that hard. And yet your hand finds your phone before your hand finds the keyboard. You call this laziness. But what if the word is wrong? What if what's happening right now has nothing to do with character and everything to do with a survival calculation running underneath your awareness? Your brain isn't measuring how important a task is, it's measuring how expensive it is. It's about 2% of your body weight, but burns roughly 20% of your daily energy. So, somewhere deep in its architecture, it runs a constant calculation. What will this cost me? What will I get back? If the cost looks higher than the reward, it quietly steers you elsewhere. Not because you're weak, because that's the job it evolved to do. Psychologist Wouter Kool, working with researchers at Harvard, built an experiment to catch this calculation in action. Participants repeatedly chose between two options, one requiring more mental effort, one requiring less. Reward stayed identical either way. Overwhelmingly, people chose the easier path. Kool called this the law of least mental effort. Your brain isn't undisciplined. It's choosing what has always meant safer. For most of human history, unnecessary exertion was dangerous. Every calorie burned chasing a task that didn't need chasing was a calorie you might not have later. Bodies that conserved energy survived longer. Over hundreds of thousands of years, that pattern got carved into how your brain assigns value to effort itself. Researcher Boris Cheval studied this pull directly. In his experiments, even highly motivated, health-conscious people were measurably faster at moving away from images of effort than toward them. You can want to start a task with your whole mind and still feel this quiet undertow working against you. Two systems, two timelines, both doing their jobs. Your brain still treats unfamiliar effort as a potential threat to conserve against, even when the real threat is nothing more than a blank page. It cannot tell the difference between a genuine drain on your resources and an email you've avoided for 3 days. This isn't unique to humans. Foraging animals across many species instinctively choose the closer, easier food source over a more distant one. Even when the distant option offers more calories, your brain runs the same underlying arithmetic, just wearing a more complicated disguise. Here's the twist. If effort were purely something we avoid, we'd never see people voluntarily training for marathons or staying up late absorbed in a hard problem. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman described two systems the mind relies on: one fast, automatic, cheap to run; the other slow and expensive. Your brain defaults to the fast one whenever it can, but it will engage the slow one once the perceived reward clears a certain bar. That bar is the whole story. Effort avoidance was never really about effort. It's about whether your brain believes the payoff is worth the withdrawal from its energy account. And that calculation is easy to influence once you understand what it runs on. Vague, distant rewards barely register. Get promoted eventually doesn't move the needle, but small, immediate signals do. This is why breaking a task into a 2-minute starting action beats willpower alone. You're feeding the calculator a cost so small, the reward doesn't need to be large to win. This also explains why starting is the hardest part, while momentum feels almost free. The perceived cost of continuing something you've already started is far lower than beginning from a standstill. The door is already open, so the version of you scrolling your phone isn't a flawed version of you. It's an old, efficient system doing exactly what it was built for, in an environment it was never designed for. There was never enough evolutionary time to update the software. Knowing this changes what you can do, not through guilt and not through raw willpower, which is itself a limited resource your brain is equally reluctant to spend. Instead, shrink the entry cost of starting until it's almost embarrassingly small. Make the reward for that first action immediate and visible. And once you're moving, trust that the hardest math was the very first decision, not the ones after it. So next time you reach for your phone, instead of the task in front of you, you don't have to call it laziness. Call it what it actually is: a very old part of your brain, still running very old math, mistaking a deadline for a threat to survive. You sit down to finally start. And this time, you understand exactly what's been quietly negotiating with you the whole time.